Hello everyone, this is Gary and today we're doing another life skills video. Now the way in which these videos work is this. There are three sections. This first section gives you a broad outline of the subject and the topics that we'll be covering as part of that subject. The middle section then deals with the meat of the subject, the detail, and I have found it best to do that through a series of slides. And then the final section is just a quick summary of what we have covered. Now, in case you miss anything, all the detail that you hear and that you see in this video is also set out in the description box below, and in addition there are some links to other relevant videos. So, having done the quick introduction, let's just get into it. Okay, so let's get into it. We're looking at logic and reasoning. And if you're going to undertake a study of logic and reasoning, perhaps as part of a philosophy course, or maybe simply as part of your own private study, well, these are the key topics and the key elements that we're going to, or you will need to cover. Now, the first area of study you will need to cover when looking at logic is that of formal logic, of deductive logic as it's known. In other words, inferences or truths to think in a sound manner is deductive logic. In other words, an inference or a conclusion following on from a given premise. In other words, a syllogism. And it's true if it's based on the premise, but of course the premise also has to be true, and in case you're wondering as to what is true, well, it is that which calls reality and fact. But in terms of logic, you start with a premise and you draw a conclusion based on that premise in the form of a syllogism. All of these things, if you're not clear what they mean, they can be easily discovered by a little bit of research, but broadly those are the topics covered in deductive logic. Okay, so in contrast to deductive reasoning, we have what is known as inductive reasoning, and there are four elements to that, and it's part of the field of formal logic. It's about inductive reasoning, and it's based on a body of observations which give rise to a general principle. In short, you are able to say that a particular statement is probably true based on the evidence in front of you. That then is like inductive reasoning. Let's move on to the next part. So the next part of formal logic, inductive reasoning, is enumerative induction. Now, what is all that about? Well, that's based on a number of instances, and the more instances that occur, you would say that the stronger is the conclusion that you reach, and that is enumerative induction. Now, the next type of inductive reasoning, which is part of formal logic, is what's known as eliminative induction, and that is based on various kinds of instances. In short, you're looking at possible causes and not causal connections. Finally then, in the context of formal logic and inductive reasoning, we're looking at analogical reasoning. In other words, it's inductive, but it goes from case to case. It's based on precedents from one particular to another particular instance. And indeed, it's a basis for a good deal of legal reasoning. Now, having looked at formal logic and reasoning, it is very important to look at informal logic and reasoning, because in truth that is the most commonly found method of reasoning. In other words, procedures for the analysis, interpretation, evaluation, criticism, and construction of arguments, or argumentation. And indeed, if you're involved in any course, you're studying logic and reasoning, then informal logic, as it's described, is largely the thing that you will study and find as the most commonly found method of reasoning in day-to-day life. In other words, critical thinking, thinking skills, and reasoning in ordinary language. It'll involve things like studying the analysis of available facts, evidence, observations, and arguments to form a judgment. And in truth, that is how most of us from day to day conduct our logic and our reasoning. So, an example of informal logic, because after all, that is the thing that we come across most often and will form a critical part of any study of the subject of logic and reasoning. Let's take a financial decision that needs to be made, a decision on a risk analysis basis. How do you do that? You look at the combined probability of expected outcomes. In other words, a decision tree. That's an example of informal logic. And in terms of arithmetic, you might look at the percentage of an expected outcome and its value plus the percentage of another expected outcome with its corresponding value. And when adding the two together, that gives you an overall value as to a risk analysis. You might look at a series of options and compare them and take the one that has the best expected outcome. So, a quick summary then of logic and reasoning. If you were thinking of undertaking this as part of your studies, or indeed you just want to do a bit of research to know what it's all about a little bit more. And you can see that it covers the following key topics. There's formal logic and there's informal logic. And then in the informal logic area, there's clearly the very practical things like financial decision making and methodologies. But essentially, that is what logic and reasoning is all about. Okay, so I hope you found that life skills video useful and interesting. And as I've said before, all the detail which I've covered in this video is also set out to assist you in the description box below, and you will also see a number of links to other relevant life skills videos. Now all that's really left for me to say after that is that if you like this video, please mark it as a like, and if you wish to see more videos like this, then please subscribe. Finally then, let me just say thank you very much for watching this video, and bye for now.